The Poet, Part 1, for Dr. Doris Lister. How with this rage shall beauty hold a plea, whose action is no stronger than a flower? From the beginning it is what we bring, whatever has been lost along the way, from the smallest thing beyond retrieval, known and significant from disarray. How casually the unlived dreams were lost in the never-ending argument of night and day, pitched against the darkened stars that were always too far off to see, or as memories stolen slowly by default. The throwaway line left to stay, the last goodbye that will not go away. Whatever was borrowed that was not lent, from the anger, the hurt without intent, a lifetime burning in every moment. What mattered to me back then were the words for the end. The sound of their meaning would ricochet through my world from the day they were first written down, the lodestar around which everything moved, with which to steer a course by in the fast enclosing darkness after and before. There in dreams I used to walk, infinite shallows and silence such, and beyond imagination, or the rim of horizon encircling me. There is only the story left untold, and yet there is no telling that will hold. Where are the dreams that carried it along, the ransom for a life and a last song? Nothing has changed since Keats resided here, when the poet stood his ground in Hampstead, loitering on the outside, forlornly looking in, searching for something once known that never could be found, transfixed as Yeats would so describe him all those years ago. How I'm distracted by his presence then, especially in the softly falling rain, trickling quietly through the runnels to the welling low-banked sea of Southend Green, where the crossroad follows all that's gone before. Echoes that meet or resound, pall for ever as once, and as all that's known, destined as once never to reach landfall. A poet is the loneliest being in the world, for there is none like him or her among the throng, known and yet unknown among their own, for whom they learn to long, measuring the untold distance, alone in utmost song, and at the margin of echoes grown, unfamiliar and strong, that loiter at the far edge of dreams and never let go. Loss, anonymously thrown as a shadow between heaven and hell, remembering something belonging, somehow left behind. It's always the same, destined forever never to belong, forborn, forsworn by an elusive fame. What is it that sets the poet apart? on a journey neither from nor towards, whether carried unbound on an unstemmed stream, or at a standstill where the crossroads start. A journeyman bartering simply for sustenance, for a song along the way, with nothing to follow or to stay for, left to hurry all the while, before the night takes hold, or a new day breaks with nothing to be sold from the labyrinth of echoes he knows, without shelter from the sun and the burden of its maelstrom. A life lived out alone for every word, as a bird's solo flight, unseen, unheard. It is an emptiness which has to be addressed in order that a letter can be sent to another world, a frontier of time without end, without border or control, a delivery to mankind from a civilization left behind. A story told and lived to the utmost, hurriedly written before the last post, even as day and night were bought and sold. Poetry faced a planetary cold, the narrative of silence left untold, the unconscious dragged from its cargo hold, the unwritten hours with nothing showing, the poets suppressed without their knowing. Something enough to bring, to apprehend. What has the poet to look back to when under the scaffolding lies a ruin where everything he knows has been taken from him? No more than left to leaf through on far off and ineffable afternoons. A poetry not of his own making, a story out of time without an end, a familiar anonymity turning unread in the wind, abandoned. The poems like children have grown and gone, their footfall echoes in the empty rooms. Without shadows memory comes and goes, taking with it the only thing he knows. A poet is destined only to fail in almost everything he tries to do. The very words uttered by my mother were the sudden harbinger to my ear as she prepared me for a life to be somehow lived through in the long years after. I no longer dream about those days, nor do I know about tomorrow. Only a sensed or unsung sorrow can assail the unwritten diurnal reverie, where I dwell in the dark, a failure now, and in a life to be somehow got through. Yet all those years ago, while still a girl, someone wrote once about the planet's whirl. The poet has to give everything for the cause he knows, so that in the end he no longer knows himself. As a silent protester with placards along the way, he must stand within the vicinity of the casual backward shoulder glance, with nothing to say. His whole life is held in the balance and equilibrium of silence and the end, and yet propelled towards the known unknown. The origin of an echo and its first beginning, tracing in the hurry of the weft and woof just what it was that was left behind. Footprints in the snow of an infant mind. There is no rest for the poet. He must be about the business of being on the road, in the haste before midnight and the end. So many are the times he was led astray, hurrying after the light along the way, a fugitive pursued by an unknown force, or a wandering amnesiac with nothing to say. Night and day, an unseen horizon would leave its circumference in between. His bed was forever under the stars, here, where the spirit had nowhere to lay its head. A raconteur remembering something, a conjurer of words out of nothing. The longing of a poet is beyond the ordinary, the casual mode with which we barter surface words in the marketplace. Nothing known comes near enough to sound that distance, a dream where language lodges, becalmed and inexplicable, written already by an unseen hand, and magnifying time's understanding, remembered as once, and then forgotten, before sailing out of sight with the light. Involuntary, inscribed on the dark, rhythm shackled and unfree, left bereft at anchorage, to salvage or to see. An underground stream running to the sea. Always before him lies the empty page, that neither the long-haul flight of time nor the casual stealth of a stolen hour can assuage. Between extremities once I read, man runs his course, but a poet has recourse only to the emptiness in his soul, a stone lodged fast in the flow of existence, yet with a heart more full of sorrow than he can understand. For the poet is alone before the whole of time, with nothing to be lost or won, the voice and ear of a generation. Between choice and chance, silence comes and goes, leaving him with the only thing he knows.